Good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, December 12th, 2016. And this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Monday, everyone. It is a chilly 24 degrees and very dark and cloudy here in upstate New York. We had some fog snow over the weekend, but nothing major, thank goodness. So where do we leave off on Friday? We titled the show Biowarfare, 21st Century Cures, AI, Caveat Emptor, and Disinfo. We talked about a lot of things last week and really had kind of dug into this 21st Century Cures Act. It went before the Senate and the House, passed both, and now it is on Obama's desk. I saw something over the weekend that they are expecting him to sign that on Tuesday. That is tomorrow. The scary fact of the matter is, we dug into this 21st Century Cures Act when it was first introduced last year, and we discovered that it was giving free rein to the biotechnology companies, all the sprinkle funding that has been spread out across the globe. The United States has had lots of venture capital come in from places such as DARPA and the federal government, the BRAIN Project, and the Precision Medicine Initiative, as well as the push for artificial intelligence and big data, has really kind of been fueling this growth toward Star Trek medicine. We're going to take a look today at some of our potential futures, some of the things that are already accelerating. They are hoping this 21st Century Care Act is in place by 2017. It'll move the FDA off to the sidelines and have them fast-track cures, all in the name of saving people who are desperate and dying. You know, and the sad fact of the matter is, we have all been so completely groomed to trust in what they are selling us, this addiction that we suffer from to our devices. And as they are moving healthcare into the 21st century, they're going to be using these same devices, these devices in the future, which will become wearable, these devices that in the future will become swallowable. We talked about the smart pills the other day that'll be able to sense things and cure things on the fly inside of you. But, you know, what this is in essence is erasing that R&D line item budget from the biotech companies and utilizing the public as the new guinea pig. We're getting it out of the petri dish and we're putting it into real-time usage. And if we are successful, we write a case study. Right? I told you that's the way it works in technology. And they are now going to cookie cutter that and make it something that they use in our healthcare as they accelerate 21st century cures and bring us closer and closer to what has been called in the past the singularity. That is the merging of man and machine. Singularity University was a co-developed group that included Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil, who is now the head of engineering at Google. We also found out Tommy Insel, the former director of the National Institute of Mental Health, as of October 2015, moved over to Google's Verily division. And right around the time that Tommy was in the National Institute of Mental Health, it's back in April of 2013, Obama kicked off his BRAIN initiative. That BRAIN initiative has a lot to do with not only understanding the brain, but understanding how the brain affects mental disease and being able to crack that nut. Of course, they have been doing this all in the name of curing Alzheimer's because there's such an epidemic, or dementia, PTSD. We have all of our veterans coming back, and we're not just quite sure how we're going to fix this problem. Well, DARPA started on brain research way, way, way back. Like we've established many times before, they sprinkle fund out to universities and private companies now with part of this DIUX program to accelerate technological innovation in the Department of Defense. But they have been utilizing these studies to crack the secrets of what make us tick. Like I've said so many times, don't think that this investment is being done for you or your children. This investment is being made all in the name of warfare, all in the name of not only curing PTSD and Alzheimer's, PTSD in the name of a soldier, but also in being able to manipulate and control brain chemicals. We've read about that one before, too. I don't have that one queued up today, but we'll find that story where they were talking about making a super soldier being able to sense in their exoskeleton with some of these new wearable technologies. We looked at that spider dress where it could detect between your rising blood pressure and your breathing rate and your sweat, your perspiration on your body, whether or not you were feeling stressful. You'll be able to manipulate using little zippity zaps as part of that Elect RX program. And I think we're going to look at some strides that have been made in that electrical, they're calling them electroceuticals, maybe tomorrow program. But they are able to manipulate the human body in many ways that we never understood before. So anyway, as we are seeing technology companies investing huge amounts of money into creating artificial intelligence and mimicking the human brain, on the backside, what is happening is that they are trying to completely recreate the human brain. Remember Ray Kurzweil, he talked about in the future being able to upload yourself to the cloud so then you could be immortal. And at some point, somebody could download you into an avatar. You could do anything, be anybody, do whatever you want, and live for as long as you're backed up and you're paying for it. I will guarantee you that. And as they crack these secrets, they will gain more and more control over you, your essence, who you are, how you tick. Good old Tommy Insel is now at the head of that initiative. Tommy Insel is with Alphabet. And while he was with the Department of Mental Health, one of his big issues was trying to rewrite the DSM. He wanted to toss it out a window, and he wanted to find ways to diagnose mental disease, not just by characterizations in a handbook that gave drugs to utilize. Well, don't worry about it, because here comes the advent of Dr. Smartphone, Dr. Psychiatrist Smartphone. New type of speech analysis could reveal biomarkers for PTSD. That's in this case, but I also saw bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, depression, all kinds of other things, as well as physical disease as well. Doctors diagnose mental illness very differently from the way they diagnose other types of disease for a physical illness. Doctors run a series of tests, and this is where Tommy Insel actually jumped in at Google. He said, I can't run any tests, and I want to be able to run tests to be able to diagnose, beyond a shadow of a doubt, mental disease. Now, as we're watching this whole fake news mantra psyop roll out, and I saw an interesting story the other day, I think it's upstairs though, talking about, it's from a mainstream publication, but it was criticizing this, calling anything that doesn't conform to the official narrative fake news. Because in the end, you know, as your priorities change, well, fake news yesterday was, you know, right-wing sites, and fake news tomorrow is going to be Russian hacker sites, and fake news, you know, next week is going to be any foreign actors out there. They apparently I really thought this was a fake story, but I hate to tell you it's not. There apparently is some bill that's been moving forward to renew the NDAA 2017 intelligence authorization for foreign media or foreign propaganda as well as others. And maybe we'll look at this too tomorrow. But I thought it was a joke. I thought it was some unscrupulous alternative media writing some stuff, but it absolutely was not. I dug into it and found the bills yesterday. It's the HR 6393 that was published December 1st, 2016, and I think there's actually another bill out there as well. We'll look at that tomorrow. Do you have to worry as this fake news mantra is coming out and they're pointing fingers saying that all these alternative media sites are actually Russian run? Makes you wonder how far they are literally going to take this. But it gets even more disturbing. Listen to this. From Alzheimer's to ADHD, what doctors can diagnose from your voice alone. Now, a lot of us have done things such as radio shows, so we have hundreds of hours of audio of our voice that is recorded and out on the interwebs. But remember, there's also many of us that use Skype, which was purchased for a huge sum of money by Microsoft a couple years ago. But not only that, even if you don't use those things, if you don't use Facebook, which conveniently put voice calling as well as video calling to get 230-point facial recognition of you doing video. We also have our cell phones that have been recorded probably since at least 9/11, but way before then. I am certain as well. And if not that, let's go back to old school FBI black van that was recording our landline conversations in the distant past. Okay, they have lots and lots and lots of voice samples if they wanted to have them. We read a story back last week or the week before about Adobe releasing a new Photoshop for voice that will allow them, you buy the software, 20 minutes of somebody's voice, and you literally could insert words into their sentence in their voice cadence. They said at the time it was still a little clunky, but hey, at the speed that everything is moving now, it's not going to take too long for that to be as good as it can be, utilizing artificial intelligence on the back end. Well, listen to this. From Alzheimer's to ADHD, what doctors can diagnose from your voice alone. The brave new world of vocal diagnostics. Now, I don't remember the name of the woman. JJ had her on, and I think Jonathan from Continual Condition also contacted her. I don't remember her name, but she had an amazing piece of software back at the time, and this was already a few years ago. And hey, there is JJ. Speak of the devil. What was her name, JJ? That woman, Joyce? No, it wasn't Joyce. But she had a piece of software, and she needed you just to talk about anything for, I don't know, 30, 40 seconds. And then she ran a profile on you. And it was pretty extensive. It was a good, few pages, and it kind of talked about personality traits and whether or not you had diseases or problems or whatever. It was very amazing, and it was extremely uncanny. She actually ran one for me at the time, and I was pretty shocked. I should see if I could try and find that. But I don't know, maybe JJ's not listening. But I will put her name in the notes because she had a piece of software that you could even run on her website with your voice patterns and look at your own profile. But listen to this. If Guillermo Chechi, Sherry Edwards, thank you very much, JJ. That's her name. But we'll get her link, and I'll put it in the notes at the end of the show. It's very interesting. Anyway, back to the story. So if Guillermo Chechi wants to find out if you've taken MDMA or meth, all he needs is a computer and a recording of your voice. Ding. Chechny is a computer scientist at where? Ho, IBM. I should have realized. IBM, good old Dr. Watson. And a part of a growing community of scientists who think that our voice can reveal far more than our sex, age, and cultural origins. He thinks it can also unlock the mind and various psychological and neurological states that our brain may be experiencing at any given time. Guys, this is so frightening right now because they've been capturing our voice for years. And they could run these algorithms against your voice and get a full blown out profile of whether or not you could potentially be dangerous, whether or not you could potentially be psychotic, whether or not there's some treatment that they may be able to diagnose and recommend you for to be black bagged in the middle of the night. Once there's a full blown out war on the terror of fake news. Honestly, I am seeing all signs pointing to that very dystopian future. This is exactly what psychiatrists do every day. They talk to their patients, Chechi says, but we used machine learning and mathematics to replicate it. In a study published earlier this year, and this story was actually from 2014, but I have an update now. The next story is from 2016. I'm just trying to lay some groundwork. Chechi used recordings of short interviews to determine which drug tests had been, or which drug his test subjects had been given prior to the experiment. And his results relied largely on language and its meaning. Now, interestingly enough, remember, that's where Ray Kurzweil's expertise lies as well, is on language and semantics. I mean, his whole history is in developing natural language processing machines. And he's been working with the Artificial Intelligence Division and the Deep Learning Group at Google to help create the capabilities to scan large amounts of text and to draw contextual meaning from that. So, guys, I am going to say that this is all balls out. Now with Tommy Incel over there as well, really has to give you pause, if nothing else. By the way, this is out of The Verge, so this is no 2-bit publication for any of you who are out there not believing any of this. Anyway, in a study published earlier this year, 2014, Chechi used recordings of short interviews to determine which drugs his test subjects had been given prior to the experiment, and his results rely largely on language and its meaning. What we did on the analytics side was to use machine learning techniques that can measure things like semantic distance, that is, the symbolic distance between words with related meanings. Chair and table are semantically closer than chair and flower, for instance, and we can identify individual interviews with high accuracy with regards to the drugs they took just by computing the semantic distances to between a handful of concepts. With regards to MDMA, those concepts were friendliness, rapport, and empathy, and there was a higher similarity to these words in the interviews with a high dose of ecstasy. Think about police being able to use a voice scanner after they pull you over. Here, talk into this box. Or maybe in your smart car, they're going to make you talk into the box before they'll even take you anywhere. And if you seem to be under the influence, they'll take you direct to the police station. All the doors lock. We're making a detour, Johnny. Anyway, with regards to MDMA, these concepts were friendliness, rapport, and empathy, and there was a higher similarity to these words in the interviews with a high dose of ecstasy, says Chichi. He also found that people on MDMA used fewer catchphrases and jargon. And when contemporaries talk to each other, the word like is typically 10% of the words. But people on ecstasy don't use such terms as like and as often. Their speech, he said, is much more fluid. Yet Chechi's drug-related work represents only one example of the information that our voices contain. He also used voice recordings to measure speech disturbances in manic depressive patients, ding, and people who suffer from schizophrenia. Moreover, in recent years, scientists have begun to investigate the voice's potential for diagnosing Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, sleepiness, depression, and even ADHD. George Langner is a mathematician and musicologist at Berlin-based company called Audio Profiling. He thinks ADHD isn't about movement or the ability to focus. That's why his team is working on diagnosing children with ADHD using voice recordings. Speech rhythm of ADHD children are different from children without ADHD, and the length of syllables are less equal in length. But this is but one example of the measures he makes, and he says that so far his team has classified 1,000 previously diagnosed children with a 90% accuracy. Langer is also developing technology that will detect when someone is too sleepy to drive. When we are tired, he said, our speech rhythm isn't so precise, and it is not very pronounced. Jarek Kajowski, a psychologist at the Rhenish University of Applied Sciences in Cologne, is working on a similar project, except his team wants to apply sleepiness detection to air traffic controllers. And remember, this is all being back-ended to artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. Ding, algorithm, the word of 2016. Sleepiness can be detected with a classification accuracy of about 75 to 80% on an unseen speaker, 80 to 85% on a known speaker in a matter of seconds. But detecting sleepy air traffic controllers is just the start, he says. We have developed a depression detecting system based on over 200 subjects, and another phonetic approach deals with measuring alcoholization, anxiety, confidence, leadership states, or personality. He also wants to build a database for vocal influenza detection. Ding, ding. I mean, where are the limits to this? This is beyond insane. We talk all the time. What are we going to have to come up with a new language that utilizes blinking and click noises like the Africans? I mean, what the hell? Other researchers are taking a more neurological approach. By the way, this is the brain episode today. We're going to get into some new brain implants that are coming. Other researchers are taking a more neurological approach. Our studies essentially looked at speech patterns in patients with Parkinson's disease, says Raul Chavis-Vavs, a speech scientist at Michigan State University. People with Parkinson's experience changes in their voice quality, in the way they produce their sound, so vowels and consonants are no longer clear. He says these are very subtle. They aren't obvious just listening to it, but with a computer, you can do much more. Now, remember, we also looked at, and this, of course, speech recognition and speech analysis. It's early, guys. Analysis is being done by giving computers ears, right? That's called a microphone. But they've also given computers eyes, and that is the camera. We read about some of this pre-crime technology that they are creating with being able to scan your face. There's that Israeli company that can detect through genetic features in your face that's compared against a database whether or not you have a potential to be a terrorist, to be a poker player, to be a researcher. They had all these listings to have a high IQ. We also had, for many years, they were training law enforcement and psychiatrists to be able to recognize micro expressions, which is something that we do unconsciously with our face. depending on whether or not we are being open about things we say or hidden emotions we are trying to hide. Well, now they have a program that they can use to tell whether or not you are lying, whether or not you're hiding something just by scanning your face. Well, now they're going to be able to determine all kinds of different things. And of course, they don't mention lying in this story yet. But I could guarantee you that that would not be too difficult for them with your voice patterns either. Anyway, so this Raul Shivstab, the University of Michigan, is working on detecting Parkinson's disease. Says that these cues are very subtle and they are not obvious if you're just listening to it, but a computer can do much more. His team is in the early stages, and so far they've characterized the vocal changes that occur when the disease is more advanced, but hope that they can replicate the findings in newly diagnosed patients. And it is important, he says, because there is no gold standard test. Sounds to me like this move forward with psychological profiling through voice is pretty far along the path, considering that this is only 2014 in this story. Max Little, a research fellow at MIT and the director of the Parkinson's Voice Initiative, is also working on developing vocal diagnostic techniques for Parkinson's. His team can obtain a 99% accuracy in lab-based diagnostic tests, but Little notes that getting the level of accuracy isn't nearly as easy with telephone quality voice recordings. The group is now working on accurate telephone-based diagnostics, and this is absolutely crucial, he says, because many people cannot travel to a neurologist. Now think about how devastating these tools are going to be in the hands of national intelligence. Think about how insane this is to throw a couple of these applications onto a server in the NSA data center to be flagging potential IP addresses for being picked up and questioned. This is horrifying. You're going to have a self-driving car with an Atlas bot in it, first ringing your doorbell, then kicking it in, taking you off to some black site in Chicago. I mean, this is all I see from this. I don't see, double-edged sword in every technology. And of course, all these people are doing all this wonderful research to be able to diagnose disease in everybody. We're going to democratize mental disease diagnostics. And as Obama announced his newest executive order for spreading health and safety across the planet, we find out we have this international objective of the brain initiative and the Connectome project. Guys, this is very concerning. I think this is an ace that these guys are waiting to throw down on the table. They'll be able to diagnose you with anything. And if there are software applications out there that allow them to insert words into your mouth, that allow them, utilizing some sort of AI backend, can literally make you say things and say them in a certain way. And we saw even with that skinning facial app, they could literally skin your face and make your movements and record you saying something that they put into your mouth. Guys, this is a very, very dark future hallway that we are walking down right now. The work done by these researchers all differs from Chechi's because it relies more heavily on sounds and the rhythms at which they are emitted than on the language that they are using. Ultimately, however, both approaches rely on computers to analyze the connections that we are making in our brains. What our studies show is that we can measure mental states analytically, ding, without the intervention of a psychiatrist looking at the interview. Yeah. Here we go, our robot overlords. are coming to take us away. Aha. Of course, eliminating psychologists and physicians isn't the objective, but guess what? Robots are going to come for those white collar jobs as well. For Chechi, the goal is to codify medical interviews for future use. So doctors at different hospitals in different cities, for instance, can make use of the data when a patient moves. Of course, it's all about your electronic medical health records and storing them for others to listen to and make future diagnoses. Yeah, that's going to go over well in your dossier. Psychiatrists don't have time to codify or measure in a way that can be used by different psychiatrists. Chachi says, adding that we aren't talking about therapy here, but the decision that is made or the diagnosis that is made after an interview that happens in 30 minutes. As for Langer and Shishrav, we believe that their research will help strengthen previous diagnostic procedures by supplying an additional layer of objective testing. The goal is to prevent a misdiagnosis, says Langer, and at the moment, a kid diagnosed with ADHD will have been tested using questionnaires and interviews with a doctor. In these instances, Langer says a doctor's impression is crucial, and in many cases, they are good impressions, but it still has a great subjective component to it. Remember, us puny humans also make decisions based on emotion. I've read a couple stories about that now, why our future with AI should be considered, because AI makes decisions based on fact, or quote unquote fact that it has been fed, not swayed by an emotional component that makes us frail and fragile. That's a very scary thought, because I'm going to tell you what, that's where ethics are out a window. AI doesn't care whether or not part of their plan includes a bunch of people dying. Part of their plan includes a bunch of people having their lives ruined because they've just been diagnosed with some mental disease that were run by a soon-to-be required voice algorithm against a 30-minute recorded interview that you provided as to whether or not you're employable, whether or not you're insurable, whether or not you should be given benefits, whether or not you should be given universal basic income. Come on, spin us a story, Johnny. Tell us why you deserve to be paid to be sitting around looking pretty, eating grapes. I mean, this is lots and lots of things to think about here, guys. This is like a psyop within a psyop. Like you've been dreaming, and you wake up from the dream only to realize that you are still dreaming. So anyway, we keep reading this story. Yeah, let's read the ending here. Langer hypothesizes that results will vary widely. More problems occur when we go to different languages such as Arabic, Farsi, and Mandarin. They're looking to roll this out globally, guys. And if you want to work within these languages, major adjustments will have to be done. But I thought Google did pretty well with their Mandarin translator. I think Google and Microsoft have been working really hard on deep learning and machine learning and translation. And we just read a story a week or so ago about Google's translator, deep learning, teaching itself a third language to utilize as a Rosetta Stone to translate a language it had never run across before. So that's pretty advanced, guys. So I wouldn't be worrying too much about the amount of work that needs to be done to translate these psycho-identification tools to the planet worldwide as part of a global healthcare system. If you want to work with these languages, and this is all going to be done in the name of terror, by the way, and propagandists. If you want to work within these languages, major adjustments will need to be done. There are differences across these languages, but there are also hallmarks of certain diseases that will impact all of the layers in all of the conditions. So the trick is to find those changes. And I will guarantee you, Dr. Watson will be able to do that lickety split. But the most worrisome aspect of this sort of research is probably the hit to privacy. Give it up. With more and more mobile phones, so much speech is being recorded and analyzed. Ding, 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 ding. It becomes such an easy signal to access, says Shristidav. I think in the next several years, he says, and remember this was from 2014, you will see a lot more neat things, not just for speech diagnosis. This is exactly the attitude that some critics worry about already. Researchers are working on a phone app to help doctors predict, ding, when someone with bipolar disorder might have a manic episode. So it is possible that technology will soon be used by the public and the government. We could suffer from an Orwellian 1984 world where our sleepiness state is no longer private, says Kajewski. He thinks health and safety concerns may one day legitimize the use of this technology to monitor our emotional and our physical states. 21st Century Cures Act, people. It's all about precision medicine and Dr. Smartphone. I'm telling you, there's no escaping this. I mean, we have already been feeding into this machine, and now they're going to apply all their newfangled, super, ultra smart tools to what we've already been giving them for at least the last decade, probably the last 2 or more decades. Someone who has a cold and is waiting for a bus might not be allowed inside the vehicle. For example, according to a public health regulation, you will not be allowed to enter public transit and the door will remain closed for you. I could see that happening too. Like I said, or the self-driving car with an Atlas bot in it shows up in your driveway. But the potential for that scenario remains years off. Don't worry about it. This isn't happening faster than you can imagine. And it'll take a lot of time and a myriad willing participants like the All of Us program. Step right up, Jenny, to unlock the information that our voices carry. Our brain, says Langer, is a giant network where everything is connected. Ding, ding. This means that if we have problems in one location, it will have consequences in other regions of the brain, especially in the parts that control speech projection. From that, we hope that we can find traces of many other illnesses in speech sounds, but to find those solutions will be a very long process. Well, fast forward 2 years to June of 2016. This is out of Scientific American. The sound of your voice may diagnose disease, but how you talk could reveal heart disease or a concussion, say researchers, and companies are now developing novel technology. There's been talk in medicine about the need to listen more to your patient's voice, and now that mantra is being taken literally, especially since your patient's voice might be tied to the fake news phenomenon. Guys, I really think this is the card they're going to throw out there. Academics and entrepreneurs are rushing to develop technology to diagnose and predict everything from manic episodes to heart disease to concussions based on unusual sources of data, and that would be how you talk. A growing body of evidence suggests that an array of mental as well as physical conditions can make you slur your words, elongate sounds, or speak in a more nasal tone. They may even make your voice creak or jittery. so briefly that it is not detectable to the human ear, but it's still not absolutely clear that analyzing speech patterns can generate accurate diagnoses, but the race is on to try. The latest player to enter the arena is Sonde Health, a Boston company launched on Tuesday in June of 2016 by the venture capitalist firm Pure Tech, based on technology licensed from researchers MIT. Gotta love it. Sonde wants to develop software for consumers that can screen for depression as well as respiratory and cardiovascular conditions. Speaking is something we do naturally every day, says Sonde COO Jim Harper. And the company will start analyzing audio clips of patients reading aloud, but it aims to develop technology that can extract vocal features without actually having to record the words. So they're going to do it on the fly. The goal is to move the monitoring, ding ding, into the background without you knowing, and to collect some of that with devices that people already own, like your smartphone and your microphone on your computer. Sonde will have plenty of competition because guess what? IBM is teaming its Watson, Dr. Watson, with academic researchers to try to predict from speech patterns whether a patient is likely to develop a psychotic disorder in the future. Pre-mental disease. A Berlin company, and we read about them in the last story, has worked on diagnosing ADHD with voice recording. And another Boston company, Cognito, is developing a voice analysis app that is being used by where? Oh, the Department of Veteran Affairs, the same place where they just announced the Precision Medicine Initiative and AI to help treat veterans. But this is going to be utilized to monitor the mood of service members, as well as being tested in patients with bipolar disorder and depression. Step right up, veterans. They're going to use this to take away your guns. And I will bet you they're going to use this on others in the American public to diagnose you with some horrifying disease that could potentially affect your judgment and make you incapable of owning a firearm. Even the Army is interested. Oh, you would guess it. Earlier this month, it launched a partnership with MIT researchers at the same lab working on the Sonde technology with the goal of developing a Food and Drug Administration approved device to detect brain injury. And of course, this 21st Century Cures Act, to be inked on Tuesday, is going to help push this all along sooner rather than later. The field is so buzzy, like swarms of DARPA drones, that some entrepreneurs are rushing right into the consumer market, making bold claims with little clinical evidence. Well, screw that, because like I said, 21st Century Cures Act is going to do just that. And when things turn out all right, we will write a case study after the fact to peddle our wares. One team raised more than $27,000 on the crowdfunding site Indiegogo on the promise to put out an app slated to launch this summer that will analyze voice patterns to help you achieve optimal health and vitality. The crowdfunding campaign also references plans to gather data on frequency biomarkers related to symptoms of cancer. And see, that was the type of stuff that Sherry Edwards had. And like I said, I will put that in the notes. But it won't be easy to make vocal diagnostics clinically useful, cautioned Christian Polauber, computer scientist at the University of Notre Dame who studies biomarkers for neurological conditions. It can be very difficult to isolate the real cause of changes in speech patterns, he said. Recordings must also be of high quality, and that can be costly. And you need a lot of data to ensure that correlations are reliable. If you take this app and it says you're slurring your speech and having a stroke, that could be useful. You go to the hospital immediately. But on the other hand, if it says that there is a 38% chance you're going to have a migraine in the next week, I'm not sure that is so helpful to you. And you probably knew that anyway, says medical ethicist Arthur Kaplan of New York University. And they also have some brain research going on there I just read about recently. Kaplan suggests that such technology might be used to predict, the likelihood of a patient flying into a rage or losing self-control and turn those momentary lapses into a pathology. Where's the line here between what you want monitored and what you don't, he asks. Critics have also raised privacy concerns, suggesting that voice analysis technology might become so sophisticated that patients could be identified by their cadence and tone, even if their names weren't attached to a speech sample. And I'm pretty sure that they might already have technology that is close to being able to do that already with the alphabet agencies and AI and some of the back end stuff that they've been doing. I find that hard to believe that they can't already use voice patterns and stuff that they've been surveilling and databasing for a long time to do that. I find that very hard to believe. He says, I don't think that right now we have the technology to figure out who a person is. Yeah, I don't think, he says, just based on their voice alone, says Cheryl Cochran, a schizophrenia researcher at Columbia University, who has collaborated with the IBM Watson. But she continues, this technology may very well exist in our future. So, how far is this technology going to go? We've talked about wearables now being the next step from our smart devices. And they're going to start integrating these things into our appliances, right? The Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, into our Fitbits, our watches, our Apple Watch, into our clothing, Levi's, and Google working on the Project Jacquard for wearables. Intel has come up with their Atom processor that specifically is for biosensing. Where's this all going to end up? We found out that with AI, they are able now to start tracking our emotions as well. There are cameras already. They're talking about being able to detect road rage and determine whether or not you are capable of driving your car, and whether or not a smart car should be handing over control to you. Well, now, a story came out November 4th last week out of IEEE, and I have a couple stories from them. Can a wrist wearable ECG monitor, and it looks very much like a Fitbit in all kinds of swanky colors, track your emotions? Well, people have been working on stress monitoring devices for a while. And to date, most use some combination of heart rate, temperature, and maybe your perspiration. That's what I was talking about with that processor and the spider dress. But few have taken novel approaches like watching for goosebumps. And it can be helpful to know when someone's stress levels are getting out of their normal range. Remember, all this precision medicine in the end is going to be about making a dashboard of you to guarantee that you are operating within parameters. They're going to be able to monitor every biofunction within your body like you are an endpoint on a large network. So anyway, it can be helpful to know when someone's stress levels are getting out of the normal range, like when, well, they mention those damn air traffic controllers again, like when air traffic controllers are overloaded. But can a simple wearable do more than manage your stress? Well, a startup company called Planexta, launching on Kickstarter this last week after doing a demo tour of Silicon Valley last week, thinks that it can. A Ukraine-based company says that it has figured out how to match variations in a specific part of your ECG signal called the R peak to emotions. They don't mean just stress and anxiety, though, but actual happiness and sadness, and nearly 40 other emotional states. The trick, says Adam Paulin, the company's North American representative, was not only developing the algorithm, ding ding, but developing a wearable ECG monitor that was accurate enough for this purpose. The company came up with a wrist-worn gadget called the Sense, S-E-N-C-E, that has 3 electrodes, 2 that watch for the RP signal, while the third monitors other electrical activity in the body and cancels out the noise. Paulson says it is 250 times as accurate as the optical heart rate monitors that are being utilized in today's fitness wearables, i.e. your Fitbit. 250 times more accurate. The gadget takes 10-second snapshots of the signal and tracks it in an app, and in between it acts as a step tracker. And it's probably got GPS built in as well. You can have it correlate the data, here you go, with your calendar or your GPS to determine if there are events, people, or places that make you feel particularly happy or particularly miserable. Trip to visit the relatives. Oh, look, Johnny, your biostats are showing that you're feeling pretty down right now. That's kind of funny. Paulin said, but that's not funny because they can now track your interactions, where you go, who you meet with, and how you feel about them. This is beyond disturbing. Paulin says that the wearables analysis might not always match your own. People can interpret their feelings in all sorts of ways. So this little Fitbit device is going to tell you whether or not your thinking is correct or whether or not you're trying to hide your feelings, Johnny. Psychologists, he says, have expressed an interest in using this wearable to study whether or not people feel emotionally of that. To study whether or not people feel emotions at different intensities. And this Sense will ship next August of 2016, and they're taking pre-orders now at $130. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, so where do we go next? Well, I think we're going to hit this one. There was a story that came out of Big Think, and this is when you know that this stuff is about ready to hit the mainstream. And with the advent of this 21st Century Cures Act, put on a seatbelt, people, because here it comes. But Big Think tends to be a mainstream-ish publication with big pictures, big letters. You know, for people who can't think too hard, but want to get a little dose of technology and science. Here we go out of Big Think, December 1st, 2016. A new implant, and I think this is where we ended the show on Friday, is being developed for enhancing the human memory. There's a prosthetic in 1998. Andy Clark and David Chalmers proposed that a computer operates together with our brains as an extended mind, potentially offering additional capabilities as we work out our problems, as well as an annex for our memories containing information, images, and so on. And now a professor at biomedical engineering at the University of Southern California, Theodore Berger, is working to bring to market human memory enhancement in the form of a prosthetic implanted in the brain. And he is already testing it attached to humans. There's another story. Not going to get too much into detail on these right now because we only have a few minutes, if you can even believe it. There's a new one out of IEEE, December 9th, 2016. Tiny implantable microcoils in the brain activate neurons via magnetic fields. The neuroscientists and doctors who are pioneering this new medical field of brain hacking. This is all part of this brain project. Brain initiative is edicted by Obama. This field of brain hacking would like to have precise control over 86 billion neurons in the human brain. And all those neurons turn off and on in complex patterns to manage the body and your behavior. Ding! The biohackers would like to treat the brain like a control panel, flipping certain patches of neurons on or off to help you with disorders like what? Oh, epilepsy or depression. Let's get a few little microcoils inserted into our brain, and they'll be able to fix us. No problem, Johnny. You know, we also found RT News came out with a story, Frankenstein fact. Dormant memories can be revived with a magnetic pulse to the brain. Guys, this is 1984 on steroids that's about to hit us front and center. Those who struggle to recall even the most recent memories, of course, could one day have them revive with a zap of magnetic energy to the brain. Zippity zap. So get a couple little magnetic coils and get a few zippity zaps, and we'll bring all those old memories back. The notion of working memory has to do with part of the brain which allows human beings to retain new pieces of information when their attention is temporarily directed someplace else. Anyway, so what do we say to this? They said that the results provide evidence that brain cells don't have to remain active to sustain a working memory, and noted that it doesn't necessarily have to mean forgotten memories can be instantly recovered using magnetic stimulation. But don't worry about it, because we'll be able to use pulses of light, pulses of magnetism in an MRI to determine what you're trying to hide from us. In the not too distant future. All right, guys, make sure you stick around. Ms. Lonnie Clark is live up next. It is Monday, so all kinds of great stuff on Mondays. Everything that you might have missed this past weekend, especially brand new Truth on the Tracks with Brandon Turbeville as well, and live Anti-Media Radio at 11 p.m. Eastern. All right, guys, have an awesome Monday, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Everybody.